Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Hey guys, hope you're having an awesome day and ready for this episode because today we're going to go even deeper on the personality types we spoke about on the previous episode. So, if you haven't listened to last episode, episode 53 with Gabriela Cardona, and figure out your Myers-Briggs personality type, you might want to go and do that now and then come back and listen to this. If you did listen to that episode and still haven't been able to figure out your or your partner's personality type, then I hope by the end of this episode you will be able to go and figure that out. Ready? Today we are speaking to business owner, rocket scientist, author, and salesman who uses the personality temperaments to help him in what he does. Thank you, Tim Van Milligan, for being here and speaking with us. You want to start by telling us how you use the personality types in the work that you do?
I am a rocket scientist, and my day job is I sell toy model rockets. Probably about 2010, I wanted to learn how to interact better with customers. And so I discovered Myers-Briggs and personality, and that gave me some really deep insights on how to communicate with people better and to persuade them better. So then I wrote a book. I wrote a couple of books. One was called Selling by Personality Type, and the other one was Emotional Copywriting Revealed.
After studying the Myers-Briggs, you took the 16 personality types and broke them into 4 groups, 4 temperaments, and that's what you use in your work. You want to explain it?
The book that kind of got me started was by David Kersey, and it's called Please Understand Me. And he wrote a second book, and it's called Please Understand Me 2, like in the Roman numeral 2. In that book, he breaks down the 16 types for Myers-Briggs into 4 temperaments. So imagine a sheet of paper, and I want you to rip that paper in half. So now you have 2 sheets, and you're going to fold each sheet in half. And so now you have 4 half sheets. So on the first sheet of paper, you put an S, and on the second one, you put an N. So the S is for sensing, and the N is for intuition. So now on the S paper, one half will be a J, and the other one will be a P. So you have the SPs and the SJs. Now on the other sheet of paper, we have the N sheet. So next to the N, you'll put a T, and then on the bottom part, you'll put an NF. And so those are the 4 temperaments.
Okay, so if you know your personality type, you know right now which temperament, which group you're in. If you have an S and a J in your letters, then you know you're in the SJ group. If you have an N and an F, then you know that you're in the NF group.
And what we do to kind of make it easier to remember them is we give them names. And you might have heard some of the names for some of the 4 personality temperaments. Like in DISC, there's the DISC. Basically, what those are doing is putting a metaphor to those 4 letter combinations. So in my system, I look at humanity as being an army. And in an army, we're all on the same team. We're all in this together, but we need 4 types of individuals. We need warriors, and those are the SPs. Then our army needs resources. It needs logistics, and those are the SJs. And then we also need somebody to help the army to use its resources efficiently, and those are the NTs. And I call those the strategists. And then the final type of person that we need in the army is we need somebody that's going to care for the emotional well-being of the entire army. Because if your army doesn't engage into the battle, if they're being cowards and not jumping into the battle, you're going to lose. And so for those, I call them the morale officers, and those are the NFs. That's just my nomenclature. You can use anything you want. In the DISC system, the Ds are the SJs, the Is are the SPs, the S's are the NFs, and the C's are the NTs. I use all the systems because I'm always trying to learn about personality and how they all interact and are related.
Well, I like that because I think that sometimes we do these personality tests, we type someone and we think that they're a certain type, and then we get stuck in it without realizing that they're a person and there's many more aspects to it. So by using more personality programs, then you're focusing on the traits than the actual description of what it says. This is what the person has to be. I like that. Okay, let's go through each one now. And guys, if you haven't been able to figure it out yet, I hope now you will. If you have figured it out, I want you to listen extra carefully, especially to the one that's your partner, so you could really understand more about them and why they are that way. Let's start with the warriors, the SPs.
The one common theme that runs through all the personalities is that people of the same temperament, like the warriors, have very similar values. So when I talk about the warriors, I want to talk about their values. What do they hold as guiding principles to help them succeed in life? And this is why I use the word warriors, because now I can go back and say, what does a warrior need to engage in battle to be successful? So one is they need courage. So these are the people that will really test their courage. They can also be kind of in-your-face type people. They're going to take the battle to the enemy, where the logisticals are more in the defensive part of the army, where they're protecting the army. So the warriors, one of the things that they need is they need to be fast. So you'll notice that a lot of warriors are athletes. Their physique is incredible. They could be, huge bodybuilders. The world's fastest people in track and field are the warrior temperament. They also have this other unique quality. They are some of the most beautiful people on the planet. So why does a warrior need to be beautiful? What does that have to do with battle? A lot of people say that beauty is about good genes. Well, no matter who you are, everybody gets sick at the same rate. Everybody gets disease at the same rate. So they're not any better at staying healthy. But what I think beauty does, gives them an advantage in battle, because if you have two people standing in front of you, one is really ugly looking and one is really beautiful looking, which one do you fight first? You fight the ugly one. You can maybe capture the beautiful one and take them away as your prisoner. So then you can carry on good-looking genes. So I think beauty has to do with more surviving battle than it does have to do with how healthy you are.
So you said they're fast. Does that also have to do with impulsivity?
That is. The definition of the warrior, remember, is the S and the P. And the P is for perceiving in Myers-Briggs. And this is the impulsivity trait. That last letter is about decision making. So the J's make decisions beforehand, where the P's make decisions in the moment. They always want to wait till the last second to make sure that they got all their information available before they're going to make their decision. This is a really good trait to have if you're a warrior, because you're going into battle and you don't know what's going to happen. So you got to react to anything. But because it's impulsivity, it can also lead to procrastination, like rolling out of bed in the morning, where a J type person will have, I got a list of things to do. I got to get up. So let's get moving. Where there's somebody that's more on the P side will say, what's the worst thing that could happen? They're going through all their options before they actually finally make a decision.
So let's say I'm in a relationship with a warrior. What's the best way to communicate, to deal with them, and to have a good relationship with them?
It all goes back to values. So you have to know what they value, and then you want to feed them those values, because that's what's going to motivate them. Good relationships come together when people share the same values. It's when values clash is when arguments begin. So you don't want to clash values with them. And when warriors fight, they fight to win. So you got to watch out for that. In sales, I see this all the time. Warriors kind of have two modes of operation. They have the battle mode where they're in battle. And then, when you're not in battle, what do? It's like the night before a battle is going to happen. What do you want to do? Focus your mind, or do you want to have a party? Well, if you don't know if you're going to live or die tomorrow, I'm going to have a party. So when they're in party mode, they're really easy to get along with. But when they're in battle mode, it's best to just stop and, step back and let them have their space. But you do want to promote those things that they value. In my book, Selling by Personality Type, I list all the values that I've discovered. One of the things is loyalty, generosity, impactfulness, things like that. You want to say, hey, I value those too. You don't want to ever attack anything that they value, because when you attack something that somebody values, you will always trigger anger. It's guaranteed 100%. In a lot of relationships, they want loyalty from their partner. And if they feel that their partner is being disloyal, they feel it is attack on their value of loyalty, and it will trigger anger.
So you want to understand their values so that way you could work with them. So if, let's say, they're very into generosity, what could you do to support their generosity, to have more generosity in their lives and things like that?
When they're being generous, you want to praise them for it. You want to honor that generosity. Like, oh, you just, helped that kid out. That was very nice of you. I wish more people were like that. Whenever you can honor something that they value, it's always going to trigger happiness. If you attack what they value, it's going to trigger anger. If you honor, it's going to trigger happiness. So those are the kinds of things you like to do.
Okay, so let's go to the logisticals, the SJs.
The logisticals, they provide the logistics to the Army. I am in this category. So I am a logistical. So I have the S and the J, sensing, judging. What we value are other things. And so the technique is the same. You want to honor what they value and don't attack what they value. So one of the things that I value a lot is time. I don't like it when people waste my time. So any attack on time is going to trigger anger. But if you mention, oh, thank you for giving me your time today. We also like order. Where a warrior likes chaos, we like order. So warrior type people, in the middle of chaos, they find opportunity. But for me, in the middle of chaos, I find disaster. It's like after a hurricane, it comes through, it's just a logistical nightmare. But for a warrior, there's opportunities there. They could be selling something that somebody needs really, really bad.
So do you think that, let's say a time like now, for people like you, it was harder?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say harder. I would just say hard because it was chaos. And so there wasn't any order to it. And for me personally, I thought it was self-inflicted chaos. There was no reason to shut down everything right away. The other thing that us logisticals like is hierarchy. Some things have more importance than others. And so during this shutdown, they just shut down everything, instead of saying, hey, what do we really need? Who can be open? Hierarchy is really important to me as well.
Yeah, it goes all together with order and structure. Let's move on now to the strategists, the NTs.
These are, a lot of the other personality systems call them like the wise owl, kind of like a Spock, where they have the T, which is the thinking type person. So they process their decisions through this filter of thought and logic. They don't process things emotionally. They tend to be less emotional type people, although, again, emotions are triggered by an interaction with values. So if you step on something that they value, they see it as an attack and they will get angry. So one of the things that they value is logic. So if you say, something isn't logical or they're doing something illogical, they're going to see that as an attack because they consider logic very important. It's one of their values of success. They also like efficiency. So they don't like to be, in situations that they're wasting resources. They like verifiable facts. They like footnotes in books and things, that give you the exactly where this source was cited. So if a book doesn't have footnotes in it, they think it's just fiction. So again, honor those things that they value and don't anger them by attacking them.
Okay, now we're up to the morale officers.
So these are your people that process their decisions through not the logic filter, but through the emotional filter. How is this decision going to affect other people? And I can tell you're in this category. You're an NF.
1 second. Before you go into what it is, how could you tell already that I'm an F?
Well, the questions that you ask have to do with relationships. You kind of gave it away with this as being a relationship podcast. So I know right away that you're more on the feeling side than the thinking side. So now it's just, are you an SF or an NF?
Okay.
So now I'm looking for big picture concepts. And in the questions you asked kind of led me towards big picture concepts, not so much getting, into the tactical level, but more on the conceptual level.
Okay, that's cool. Now let's get into it. What are NFs, the morale officers, like?
Now,
describe me. Let's hear.
Describe you. Okay. Well, one is they like harmony. Things have to work together good for the group so that everybody benefits. They don't like it when people are ostracized and put out. Their job in the Army is to lift other people up. The word encourage means to give courage. It's kind of like, hey, get in there, get into the battle. You can do this. You have what it takes. Warriors desire courage. It's one of their values. Well, there's a number of ways to get courage. And the modern way is through chemicals. You can do it through alcohol. You can do it through drugs. In the past, before all that was available, we had morale officers, and they would provide that courage that the warriors needed to engage into the battle. What you fear is disharmony, in being divided. And what they really hate is divisive people that cause separation between one group and another group. Does this sound familiar?
Yep.
They are also big into empathy, which is a feeling of what another person is feeling. They are angered when other people suppress their feelings, because they need that interaction with others in order to provide that encouragement, to lift other people up. And they fear not being able to show empathy. If somebody said, you're being emotional, stop it. That's going to kind of anger you, and also a little bit of fear, because now you're being pulled out of the arena of where you operate the best. We need everybody, all four types of people in our army. And to exclude one would be a disaster for humanity, in my opinion. And that's kind of why I get nervous about genetic research, because in genetics, we want to make everybody, give them specific traits. When you have kids, what do you want your kids to be? You want them to be smart. So now all of a sudden you're a T. So what's going to happen to all the Fs? We're going to weed those out, but we need them. So we can't genetically engineer a perfect human. We need them all.
Okay, so that's in the whole world, but in a relationship, you're going to be missing some of them. You might even be the same one as your partner. How does that work?
Well, in relationships, the question people always seem to ask is, do people of like personalities attract, or do they repel each other? And the reason they would repel each other is because of a clash in values. It all comes back to values. And then where they attract is when values are similar. But the answer to the question is more complicated than that. People are attracted to their own personality, but then they're repelled by other traits, or they're attracted to traits that are not their own. So in a perfect world, what you want is somebody that has the same temperament as yourself. So for me, I'm an SJ. My wife is also an SJ. It's a good match because values and values match. And then for your case, an NF, you would also, you would probably get along best with another NF. So that's the part that attracts each other. But then there's this other trait that kind of you want the opposite. And this is the T versus the F. So I'm a T, so I'm an INTJ. So I have the T in there. My wife is an F. So I was attracted to her because she's an F.
Okay, so you have a bit of both in there.
Right. So we have the same values, but I'm a T, she's an F. That seems to be what people are attracted to. Now, this works really good for the warriors and the logisticals, the SJs and the SPs, because the T and the F are not in that definition of temperament. So I could get along with an F because I'm a T, but where it gets crazy is in the NFs and the NTs. So now you're an NF, you're attracted to other NFs, but then you also have this part that's attracted to a T, but that's not in the definition of the morale officer temperament. That's in the strategist temperament. So you would also be attracted to the NT, but it's not the person that has similar values to you, where you're emotional and the T is logical, and that's a clash.
So is that good or is that bad?
Well, I think it's a conundrum, because you want somebody with a similar temperament, but you also want the person that has the opposite of your T or F trait. And so I think it's harder for NFs and NTs to find somebody that's going to be a perfect match for them, because they're never going to be quite perfect.
Okay, so let's say someone is now in a relationship, a really good relationship, but they want to make it better, and their partner is a different temperament than them. Besides for, like you said earlier, honoring and valuing their values, what else could you do to improve your relationship and make it better, even though there might be some values that are so different than yours?
Okay, so I think relationships is a lot like buying a used car. So when you buy a used car, you know that somebody else has owned it previously, and yet it may have problems. So if you're going to buy a used car, say, like several years ago, I owned a Toyota Corolla, and I live here in Colorado, and we get snow, and that car was really hard to drive in on the snow. It just didn't have any traction, but it was a good car. So when you go into a relationship, as long as you know what are the potential pitfalls ahead of time, I think this gives you an advantage. So if you're a warrior and your partner is a logistical, and if you both know the good traits of the other person and then also what's going to trigger anger and fear, I think as long as you can try to avoid those situations, you'll have a good relationship.
Okay, so it's about knowing what you are, knowing what your partner are, and being just really aware and prepared for what could be.
Right. It's like I said, it's kind of like buying a car.
Yeah,
As long
that's
as
a
you
really
know
good example.
As long as you know in advance what you're dealing with, you can take actions. But I think it's a two-way street. Both you and your partner have to have that same mindset, avoiding those bad things. And and the longer you've been in a relationship, you kind of figure those things out. Where it's really critical is at the beginning. You have to anticipate them, and don't let them surprise you when they come up.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I really hope by now you have figured out your temperaments, and that gives you at least 2 letters, which will make it much easier for you to figure out the other 2 letters. I think in general, the other 2 letters are much easier to figure out. Most people know if they're introverts or extroverts, and whether they are J's or P's, like whether they like lists or just figuring out things as they come along. So hopefully the 2 hard letters you've been able to figure out, and now you could know your own letters, you could know your partner's own letters, and you could really understand their values and why they're doing things this way. There's a reason for it. There's a reason why they get mad every time you say this or get really happy when you give them that sort of compliment. The better you understand their values, the better you'll be able to relate to them and improve your relationship. Now, Tim, what last piece of relationship advice could you give us from your own personal experience?
There's 2 kinds of relationships. There's that really passionate relationship, and then there's the contented relationship. And so everybody's looking for this really deep, passionate relationship. And, the advice that I give my daughters is go for contentment. Or be happy with contentment. They're always going to go with, I want somebody that's going to be really passionate, Dad. But, for me, from my perspective, as long as they're content, that's a big win, because contentment leads to stability, long-term relationships. And contentment means, you're going to have to do give and take. You don't have to think you're settling by going into the contented relationship.
Do you think someone that's in a passionate relationship isn't content?
I think they're content when things are going well, but it's higher highs and lower lows, where contentment kind of evens out the highs and the lows. Where passionate, you can get those really intense highs, but those lows are deadly.
So probably someone like the Warriors would like that much better.
Yes, and we're a really good stability for a warrior is the SJ. I kind of think that the SJ is kind of like the universal mate. You can't find anyone else. An SJ would work really well for you. I come from a big family. I got 8 sisters and 2 brothers. Most of my sisters we're all SJs because personality is mostly genetic. So we're all SJs. We're all the logisticals. But most of my sisters married warrior, and they have been very good long-term relationships. They're nice and stable. The warriors, they like to go out and camp, and do all the fun stuff, do sports, do all that. But they have that SJ mate that kind of grounds them. And this I've noticed works really well is an SJ female with an SP male.
More than a SJ male and SP female.
Right. That is a very rare, at least for a percentage-wise. It does happen, like Donald Trump and Melania Trump. He's an SJ, she's an SP. That's rare. Because remember, I said the SPs are on the sexual beauty scale. They are very sexual, very beautiful. In the past, you probably didn't remember Christy Brinkley and Billy Joel, but, from the 1980s, they were a couple. Again, she was an SP, he was an SJ. And it's always, why is this beautiful looking woman marrying this, not attractive male? And beautiful women, they want to marry beautiful men. So an SP female also wants an SP male. But unfortunately, statistics wise, it can work, but often, there is a lot of clashing there because you got 2 warriors that are butting heads.
Yeah, that would be a bit crazy and a lot of work having to go into that relationship. I hope by now everyone has figured out what temperament they are and what temperament their partner is so they could really understand them better. Thank you so much, Tim, for clarifying that for us. And guys, if you want to hear more about the temperaments and understand yourself and your partner even better, you probably want to go to customersecrets.com or check out his podcast called Customer Secrets. All that info will be in the show notes, and I'll see you on the next episode as we meet another amazing couple. Did you enjoy that episode? Could you do me a personal favor and subscribe and leave a review? It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.